Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pastor Larry coming with another episode of the Shield of Faith podcast. With me today, we have a very special guest. She is Colorado House Representative for the 63rd District, Dusty Johnson. And Dusty, thank you so much for coming. Uh, I never thought I would have an opportunity to be able to speak and talk and interview somebody of your stature. But one thing that I found the short time we've known each other is how down to earth you are, which is means a lot to me and the people here because just like where you grew up, we're simple folks,
Yeah.
and you've probably seen more than I have. That a lot of times when people get elected, I've seen it just in our little town here. Boy, they all of a sudden they're somebody totally different. But just to put a little history on how Dusty and I met. Back in April, uh, I was given the opportunity to go to the state capitol and give the opening prayer for the House of Representatives. And I thank God for it, not just for the opportunity to pray over the legislators, but I was able to see things that I had no idea about because, like a lot of us uh, out here, especially in rural Colorado, rural America, I would say, uh, we don't pay enough attention to what's going on in both our state and uh, federal governments. We're concerned about our county commissioners and our mayors and stuff like that. And in the amount of time that we spent uh, at the state capitol that day, and I almost didn't go. I thought, man, that traffic is going to be, and the Lord said, no, you're going to go. And we didn't hit no traffic. Getting onto the grounds of the Capitol was a breeze, and couldn't find my parking spot. But then the state trooper said, "Just park behind my car, you'll be fine." And but being able to talk to you, uh, to Representative Bottoms and Cynthia, I believe it's her, yeah, Cynthia.
Mhm.
She's the one that took us around, and boy, she was just full of all kinds of information. But just a little bit that we sat in the House on the floor there and listened to the bills and the arguments, it blew my mind how quickly things went. And then the amount of, excuse me, the amount of legislation that took place in the short session that you guys had. Uh, well, you go from January to May. Is that what
Yeah.
the?
120 days. So yeah, January, May.
And you did how many? How many bills were ran through during that legislative session?
Approximately 657, so 650 to 660.
Wow, that is,
Too many.
and so those are laws being voted on, correct?
Correct.
And so where do you find the time? And now I know they have like subcommittees that go more in depth into certain bills, right?
Right.
And then those representatives tell the rest of uh, the representatives, whether it's Republican or Democrat, uh, basically what the bill's about, and, and kind of how it'll affect the state, correct?
Correct. I mean, and I can't speak for all members. I know for myself, I've read all 657 ish. If I get the number like one or two off, but read all of the bills once. Now, if they were in my subcommittee or the main committee, I read them very thoroughly.
Right.
But I made sure at least I read everything once, just in case anything on, a topic like judiciary. I'm not as versed in it. I'll read it once to see if anything major pops out at me, but then I'll talk to my colleagues,
Right.
look at their expertise. If it's coming from the Senate chamber to the House, then I can talk to the senators and see what they saw.
But that is
But
still
yeah,
a lot. Is that so? Is that normal?
for that many bills, or
Right. Yeah. For
unfortunately, I know
wow.
we've seen anywhere from 630 to 700 plus.
So with the Democrats in charge, our state's so messed up that they need to pass 600 and some new bills or new laws each year.
I don't even know that messed up, or they just have that much leeway that they want to. And
Well,
mind you, 65 of them was for appropriation. So
right, right,
you have to do, especially when it comes to funding the state, we do
right.
separate bills per an agency or division because it makes it more pointed as we're talking. So we are breaking it down to its simplest form for those 65. That makes sense because if you just do a giant bill and you like funding for behavioral health out here, but you don't like funding for um, some of illegal healthcare. This way, if you break it down, it makes it easier to kind of work through as opposed to one giant bill.
I see.
So 65 of them are budgetary. Kind of makes sense why we have so many. Each member is allotted up to 5. You don't have to use up to 5. You really should stay within 5. But then when you're in majority, uh, they tend to pick up. There's some members that had 40, 50 bills this year.
Right. So, two of the bills that really struck me while I was up at the Capitol, and the one thing that I did really enjoy, and we weren't ever uh, accosted or anything negative
You were
said
on
to
the
us,
other side.
was our ability
Yeah.
to pray and sing. And you remember the big biker looking guy that came with us,
Hmm.
Big Mike? He had $1 million bills that he was passing out, and on the back of it was the gospel. And uh, we had these little baby Jesuses. We give them to people and say, everybody needs a little Jesus. I'm going to bring some to you tonight to give to you.
I would love, yeah, and it's
Uh,
well. I mentioned the other side because you were sitting on the majority side.
yeah, yeah,
Next session when you come through, I'll make sure you can see this other side just so you can see the differences too.
right. And I was,
Conversations, feelings, everything. It's day and night.
because there seemed to be a lot of discussion going on the minority side, but
Yeah,
on the majority side, it was more just joking, and it did
a little more
strike.
disconnected over there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you had your little clicks, and it was. I didn't hear a whole lot of business being spoken. It was a
more
more,
of hey, do you want some apples or what's
yeah,
going on here? Hey, how are your
I
kiddos?
can't
Yeah.
wait till lunch. I wish we would have stuck around for that lunch because we probably won't have that opportunity again.
Hey, depending on the day you plan, we'll plan on one of the major lunches. You can
Well,
probably
it was the wild game that they
oh
served
yeah,
that day.
sports. We could plan for you to come on the Sportsman Caucus Day next year.
Well, that's just having the opportunity to go.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really struck me was there was one representative, a Democratic representative, that asked the body to pray for his friend, his high school friend that had passed away.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, what an awesome thing uh, to have an opportunity, and what a correct thing to do, stand before all the people and ask for prayers for this man's family. But then it dawned on me, how could you vote kill babies and stand there and ask people to pray for your friend who passed away? There was nothing wrong with asking for the prayer, but how do you have those two different mindsets where it was a tragedy for your 40 something friend to pass away, which it was,
Right.
but it's not a tragedy to see that an unborn child, regardless of how far along they are. I don't understand how you can justify the difference. But the thing that really warmed my heart was Big Mike went and found him. Uh, and when in fact, we were standing out in the foyer with Scott, and we were all praying. And when we got done, Mike seen that representative and went over there and asked him if he could pray with him.
And it was receptive.
Oh yeah, and again, it entered my mind. And so when I look at these people that vote for these horrendous things, I have to stop and realize that it's not them. It's Satan. It's sin. And because they're not in a right relationship with God, it's easy for Satan to feed these lies. And
There's such a disconnect on what is the sanctity of life.
right,
You think of life. I think of life at conception. I'm pro life all the way.
right,
Up to like I don't even believe the assisted suicide. Like
right,
I'm up through like we believe in life everywhere. But you're right. It's a disconnect. It's a narrowing of And I don't know if it's comfort thing saying, "Oh, I believe in life, because they died and I'm sad, so I must be a good person. I believe and I feel that." But then
Well,
I'm not looking at the babies in their
it,
mindset.
that's because they don't have to see it.
Out of mind.
It would be different if that child was in a hospital room, and but even that happens.
We were
You
talking
know,
about that earlier. Of
some
yeah,
states allow, even like you said, Colorado's going for before the first try.
yep. We have that already. Yeah. So
Right, and so
yeah.
what a tragedy that is, and it shows the difference, um, the generation, the generational gap, and what the current young generation, uh, the church has kind of failed them because they failed their parents, and what I mean by that is earlier we were talking about how the church back in the day was, I used to call it the church of no, because no, you can't do this, no, you can't do this,
Oh,
no, you can't do this. And when people started to learn for themselves, kind of like back in the 1500s when the Reformation took place, it happened because people wanted to read the Bible for themselves, and the Catholic Church said, no, we'll read it and tell you what it says, and we'll tell you what to believe. And tens of thousands of people died just to have the right to read. And so the generation before this one, when they realized that the Bible doesn't say I can't go to the ocean, the church teaches, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but it's okay. The Bible, the church teaches that drinking is a sin. Show me in that book where it says it's a sin. It does not. It says do not become a drunkard.
or gluttony, which means to drunk too
Gluttony is
much.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just alcohol. So it says don't become a drunkard, but then it says don't become a glutton, because anything that you do too much becomes an idol, and you put that before God. And the very first commandment is to put nothing before God. And so I remember one of my parishioners when I first started pastoring. He had, they attended church in Sedgwick. I walked in to a restaurant in Ovid that also had a bar, and they were eating in the bar side. And I seen him take his napkin and cover his beer bottle. And I went over there, and I've known the guy most of my life. And
Yeah.
I told him, I said, well, that looks like a pretty good meal. I said, you mind if I join you? And I had no intention of joining him. I just wanted to
Did his
make him a
face
little
just
uncomfortable.
go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, I told him, I said, you don't have to cover that up. I said, what did Paul tell Peter or tell Timothy? Take a little wine for your infirmity. The,
Jesus
the, the
turned water
very
into wine.
the very first miracle he ever created. And so it's not, but that's what I'm saying. The church lied to a whole generation, and so that generation no longer trusted the church. And so they walked away from the church. Not necessarily walking away from God, but they walked away from the church. But this generation, they're looking for something to believe in again because they don't trust the government.
Nor should they.
And right, and so they're looking for someone to trust. So it's a perfect opportunity for the church to be honest and forthcoming to these young people, and just speak what's in that book, live what's in that book. And one of the very other things that Jesus really emphasized was don't judge. Like we were talking about, there's no better. There's a singer. His name is Michael W. West. Michael West, and he came out with this song called "Truth Be Told." And in the second verse, it says, "Didn't you say that the church should look more like a hospital? And if this was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded."
With all coming in
Bec-
from
just because you accepted Christ, don't mean you ain't still broke. Because we still live in this flesh. We've received forgiveness, and Jesus died for our past sins, but he also died for our present sins and our future sins. He even told us that each day we'd all fall short of the glory of God. So in the eyes of God, sin is sin. There's only one sin that's unforgivable, and I don't think a Christian can really do it, and that's blaspheming the Holy Spirit. But that means each day I sin. And if sin is the same in God's eyes, regardless of what it is, why should I point out your sin thinking that it's worse than mine?
He who shall throw the first stone.
Right. Because the penalty is the same. The penalty for sin is death. So, getting back to what we were talking about, I'm like a rabbit or a squirrel, my wife says. I just, in my church, I'll tell you the same. I'll be talking about this.
You keep them entertained. They're like, oh, he had notes. Where's he
Yeah,
going? Oh, he's
yeah.
back.
That if they snooze for a second, they're gonna
Derailed
lose
completely.
track. Yeah, they won't be able to connect the dots. But so seeing that, I realized how important it is for us in rural Colorado, rural America, to really pay attention to what is happening in our state. We want to gripe and we want to complain, but we don't want to take the time to understand. And I think a lot of that is, and this is my next question for you, is because we believe our vote has no weight because our counties are so small and we're so less populated as the larger counties. But I was shown something uh, that if rural Colorado would come together, especially the conservatives, and vote together, and each of us go and vote, then our vote actually can make changes. So my question is, how do we relay that to people who have been told for quite a while now that your vote really don't matter? Because I notice you, uh, I keep track of you. I'm not stalking you.
I make it
I just,
transparent for everyone. So you're good.
but I see where you're constantly, almost daily, going here and going there, and that's your message is your vote, how important it is uh, for us to vote, and that we can.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine,
I forgot to turn this on.
but we can make a difference. So if you would take a minute and kind of explain for our district, for example,
Yeah.
what our votes actually could do if we all would go to the polls and vote. And it's not telling people how to vote.
No, it just show up. So before even telling you that your vote does matter, but it's the. I mean, I knew I grew up with it. I'm sure you did. If you don't come to the table for dinner, you don't eat. You're going to be hungry till breakfast.
And you ain't got no one to blame but yourself.
Exactly. So if you don't vote until the next election, can you really gripe? I use hands a lot. You get
I do
derailed.
too.
I use hands.
That's why I didn't turn on the motion thing because I did that
Perfect.
the other day
Yeah.
and it started following me.
So if you're not at the table, you don't get fed. Your voice isn't heard. But we do have a voice. So I mean, every single House district has 89 to 90,000 people, and that vote counts as one out of 65. So it has the same. My vote via everyone here in the Northeast, because I work for you all, counts the exact same as a district in Denver. And people lose sight of that. That we do have. We just have to stand together. But then we need to turn out in drones because some of these votes, I can name three that we switched this year. One vote, we won by 3 votes. That was it. And they took like over 5 days to do this recounting, everything else. And we won that seat to red with 3 votes. We run another seat by 300 votes. Another one maybe by 500. But you look at it, that's one of these communities just showing up and saying, hey, here is a way to get active. Now, in a House district, you're pretty safe. It's a pretty red district. But if we get everybody to turn up, we look at next year, we're going to have, all of the statewide positions are open from governor, treasurer, secretary. We'll have a U.S. Senate race open. We have a U.S. congressional race open, which Northeast, pretty conservative, but we still have, the Elbert County, some of Weld County, the Douglas area that we need to make sure we're showing up so we keep it red.
Right.
So you look at all these other races aside from just a House district. Mine, you have others that a statewide vote, every single vote is going to matter.
Right.
And if we don't show up, we're going to wonder why the rule is not at the table.
Right. And there's some like an amendment to our Constitution. I know.
Yeah. Oh, and ballot initiatives. Yeah.
Right. Those every single vote is counted.
Yes.
The people's vote is counted, so every vote is counted. When House Bill 1312 passed, uh, there was, and it may still be, I'm not sure, talk about making putting out a petition and try to put an amendment on the ballot to change our constitution to make that law invalid. Right? And which I'm not too sure if what the Supreme Court did just last week what doesn't take care of that problem. But
Well, and luckily with House Bill 1312, still outrageous, but we watered it down enough
right,
that the messaging still is outrageous, but we took away the teeth of it.
right.
So now it's a statement bill, which means they're going to come back eventually and make it into a regulatory with consequences. But for purposes of this last one, at least we took the teeth out and we bought ourselves some time.
But the one thing I noticed about that
If
was
that makes
when,
sense, yeah.
yeah, they'll do like California did. They'll figure out a way to reword it,
Mhm.
and if people aren't paying attention, they won't see this new wording is just different words for the exact same thing that initially was in there before you guys got it changed. But
If they take it to the ballot initiative, we're
right,
worried how the people.
but
If they bring
luckily
it
you
back in
guys
the House and in the Senate, we'll keep at it still.
right. But the one thing that uh, again showed me the importance of paying attention and then speaking out was when the Senate Judiciary Committee uh, held their hearing, and what 700 and some people.
It
I
was,
signed
yeah,
up to speak, and they never got to me, and I was a
yeah.
little mad because I stayed up till midnight till they finally hit the gavel. But you could actually, from my understanding, there was some minds changed from the testimony of people that opposed
Yeah.
uh, that bill to the point where uh, the vote wasn't quite what they thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it
It
made them
was
just think a little bit.
right, and so again, that uh, shows the importance. Without having gone up there, I, I would still have my head stuck in the sand, worried about my little corner of the plate.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I got plenty to worry about. But what happens in the Capitol is going to affect us. And even if we go vote and it doesn't change something that particular time, at least we took part in what so many died to protect.
Well, and even it's a strategy. And I say it because, one, it wasn't right that they cut off debate. In committees, it can go over midnight. It should go over midnight if you still have people, Coloradans, wanting to testify.
Right.
They shouldn't censor the people. They do, but they shouldn't. Long game of it is, though, even we don't have the numbers. We have 22 Republicans out of 65 in the House. We have 12 Republicans out of 35 in the Senate. We're one third and one third on both sides. We can only fight so long on the floor, but it's through the people when you show up to testify or Zoom in to testify that if they're doing the people's work and actually letting people testify, we're running the clock. Because the longer we make them have to listen to something, one, hopefully reality sits in, hopefully they see something, hopefully it changes the vote, we add pressure, but it also moves it into the next business day, and we keep pushing other items off.
Right.
So that's where, we got a lot of compromise on 1312 because it was taking so much time and tension that it was pushing other items that they wanted to get through that was less tensious
Oh, and
off the
they're running out
clock.
of time.
So they finally said, we're going to do this. We're going to make it basically lukewarm water at this point, as opposed to the boiling pot that we were facing. So if we can get this amendment, you take it. Can we stop pushing the clock and get some other things on?
Right.
So we're pushing other items off. We have
So
some
even though
negotiations.
you're in the minority, there's
Yeah,
things
we
that
can still use strategy, but we need people
right,
to show up to testify.
right,
Because the
that,
more people to show up and
exactly,
testify, the more time it buys us. So we can
right.
do more backroom talks, or we can annoy them enough that they can't just push through, push through, push through.
As other agendas that they have,
Yeah,
there's a chance that they're going to run out of time. And
yeah.
so, for somebody like me who didn't get a chance to speak, uh,
Not okay, but we can
well, the
stand up
worst
and
thing
say,
I
yeah,
could do is say, "Well, I'm not going to sign up again because they
yeah,
didn't call me." So you just got. It's like everything else in life. Uh, some sometimes it works out really well, and other times uh, you just got to try and try until sooner or later you're going to have an opportunity. And for somebody like me, anyway, them not allowing me to speak just made me more resilient to sign up the next time.
And that's what we hope it carries. I mean, they should let you speak,
Right.
but the resilience of, hey, if they're going to start shutting down everyone's voice,
Well,
hopefully makes more people outraged, saying, all right, I'm very stubborn as a person. I don't
right.
know if you picked that up, but I mean, I might be like, hey, tell my friends, let's all 15 sign up. We're going to push this now. We get enough Coloradans to pay attention that they don't actually have a voice at the Capitol like they're supposed to.
Right.
That's where you start to wait.
Exactly. And myself and another pastor a few years ago went up to the state capitol and joined some other pastors and church members, and we prayed on the steps of the Capitol on a Saturday. We didn't realize that uh, the LGBTQ community was having a protest on the Capitol grounds that same day. And when their time was up, they were supposed to leave, and we were able to do our thing, but they came back. And the amazing thing is, we were up there singing, and they were just yelling. And a lot of people may not believe this, but we couldn't hear them anymore. And my wife was videoing it, and when we went back and looked at the video, you couldn't hear them anymore. All you could hear was the singing, and that was God. So for those who believe, you know, we have to understand that it's not what we do anyway. It's what God does, and He just uses us to accomplish it. So if things don't go our way today, well, really they didn't go God's way, but they will go God's way. And that's one thing in a lot of your rural areas. Not as much as it used to be, I don't think, but the church uh, and its members were very dedicated to holding the elected officials responsible, especially when comes to uh, human rights stuff like abortion, uh, stuff that most people would consider to be horrific anyway. So probably one of the most important things is for us to keep reminding people of the importance of voting, whether it's in your municipal election, your county elections, uh, state, and federal, especially with the governor's race that is happening next year. Because I don't know a lot about politics, but if I'm not mistaken, for governor, they count each vote, correct?
They do. So, well, so all, and this is where it gets tricky. So, all statewide races except Senate and House,
Right,
those are by district. But other statewide races, whether it's U.S. Senator, Governor, Treasurer, Secretary, Attorney General, that's what I forgot. There's a lot of them, elected officials. All of those is a vote for vote.
right,
So, in theory, I would love to see that Denver's not showing up to vote and everyone in rural Colorado starts showing up.
exactly,
Unfortunately, it's the other way around because a lot of people just say my vote doesn't matter. Well, you get that collective and it starts to spread in the community. You now have entire communities that aren't voting.
right,
So when you look at the polls, it is the Christians that are the undervoters.
exactly,
We have a lot of Christians who stay home or travel, but stay home is the same, and they don't show up to vote.
right. And that
And that would
I
change a
read
lot.
that same study, and
Yeah.
I think it's important uh, for people like me that have a voice in the church. I have a collective audience every Sunday to remind people of the importance of getting out to vote, because I know when they were talking, before that HB 1312 finally was voted on, they were already talking about that petition,
Mhm.
and I seen uh, a letter that showed that if each district could get 2% of the uh, Republican registered voters to vote, they would have enough to overturn or to put the
Put
initiative,
pressure.
or at least even put the initiative on the ballot.
Well, to get on that, yeah.
Right. So if there's enough votes to do that, then there's enough votes to make a difference in a Senate race or a House race or the governor's race.
Right, and not to confuse people, when you get a ballot initiative, it's signatures, you're asking people to sign that
Right,
they wanna
right. Well,
hear it,
that's that. Yeah,
but if you have everyone who signs the petition now saying, "I'm gonna show up to vote because I want that petition,"
right. That's the hope.
that's where
Is
the signatures turn into votes,
exactly
and
and
that's the process, just to clarify the 2,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, you need to clarify a lot with me.
Oh, no, you're good, just for those watching too, to
No,
educate
but
because
no,
yeah,
that's true because I forgot it was signatures
yeah,
with the hope that the people that signed the petition, when it comes time to vote, they would go and vote. And
yeah.
so,
And you get the people too who just say, "Hey, we should have the right to hear it on the ballot." It doesn't mean they wanna vote for it or against it,
right.
they're just for the process of let's bring it to people.
But
So that could offset the vote a little bit.
at least out here, uh, people would be aware that
Yes.
something like that would even be, uh, is being uh, looked at to be put on the ballot. But it is. I mean, you guys did an excellent job with watering down that bill to where the majority of the most dangerous stuff in it is no longer there. The other thing that really concerned me, the other bill I looked at, I don't. It was a Senate bill. I don't remember the number. Is uh, what it takes to buy a long gun and a shotgun. Uh,
Yes, Senate Bill 3.
it's going to take
I think it was
the
3,
amount of
yeah.
money and time it's going to take to buy a rifle. And what people don't understand, I was in the military for 8 years, and I can do as much damage with a 30-06 hunting rifle as I can with an AR style or an AK-47. It's just the way it looks. It fires the same round. You can pull the trigger just as quickly. And so to have a gun never killed anybody. And so what they're doing to try to get around our Second Amendment rights is to make it so difficult to buy the weapon
Well, I'd even
that
say knock it away from it. They're chipping at it, they're just taking a different approach.
yeah, and I still believe when they passed that, they still violated our constitutional
Oh,
rights.
it's
But they're
yeah.
they're trying to do it like you said, they're chipping away at it to where hopefully people won't notice that they are violating our constitutional rights. Uh, but they're trying to make it so difficult that you just say it's not worth it.
Well, it's more of a they're convincing themselves that you're not saying, "No, they can't own something, you just can't buy it." And we heard it at the well for I mean, we've seen this on the sales tax and access to ammunition. We've seen it to the access now to, gun shows or gun vendors
Right.
at, these different festivals. We see it with, 03, the Senate bill looking at, these, automatic guns now. And they're chipping at everything, but they would come to the floor and
Well,
say,
just
"We're not saying you can't
real
own it.
quickly,
We just wanna make this harder for you to get a hold of."
no automatic weapon is legal. These are semi-automatic weapons.
Ooh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so you got to pull the trigger every time. But what they don't realize, they're costing the state a bunch of money in tax revenue because I can drive across the state. Like you said, it doesn't forbid you to own it.
No, you could still have it in your house, and they even said that's the thing, you could have it in your house, we're not gonna take it away.
So
We're just
I,
gonna make it so expensive and burdensome that you're not ever gonna get it to your house.
I'll drive the 30 miles to Sydney and
Nebraska, or you'll
pay
go
the
up to
tax,
Wyoming, or you
pay
can
the
even go down to
taxes there.
Kansas, yeah.
And when it comes even to a handgun, you can find a licensed dealer in the state of Colorado and they can purchase the gun. I can go to Cabela's, pick out the gun, give them the information for the licensed dealer in Colorado, and they'll ship it directly to them. And I go there and pick it up and sign the paperwork. So, really, all they're doing is costing the state revenue in the taxes that they could. I'm all for gun safety, and when I went and got my concealed weapons permit, I had no problem with them requiring a class. I got mine through the prison when I worked there, so I'm all for that. But at the end of the day, if they make it where I can't have a gun, then the only people that's going to have guns are the people that shouldn't have. And so
Well, and we're teaching society to be complacent. I want public education. for guns. You have hunter safety,
right.
you have horses. I just don't think it's the proper role to have a concealed carry. I think it should be like an open carry. You have the right
Well,
to, but
uh,
we've now said as a state and a nation, you have a concealed, and we felt complied, complacent in society. Okay, we'll obey by the concealment practice, and
well, even
20 years from now, we'll obey by going to another state.
a concealed weapon. So, like in Arizona, there is no concealed weapon except for in Phoenix. They do have where you can, if you carry concealed in Phoenix, you have to have a permit. But anywhere else in the state, you can open or conceal carry one way or the other. Again, if somebody's intent is to do harm, they're not going to pay any attention to the law.
Now we're having law-abiding
But
citizens.
like in
Yeah.
Texas and in Colorado, you can open carry. In Texas, you can open or conceal carry. And I've never understood Denver County's ability to keep people with concealed weapons permits from being able to carry concealed weapons. Even an off-duty law enforcement officer cannot carry in Denver County unless he is a law enforcement officer in that county. Uh, that's what I was told by our sheriff was if they go into Denver County, they got to lock their weapons up in their lock boxes of their patrol car unless they're on duty.
Maybe my understanding was post got them through everything because you can still carry in the Capitol if you have your post certificate.
Well, maybe that changed then. But for an ordinary citizen,
Right.
even if I have a concealed weapons permit, I can't carry concealed or open in Denver County. I was told it was because it was a law that was passed eons ago. Uh,
Well, and yeah,
but
we have so many mismatched things where you can transfer it, across because then,
yeah,
but
which I'm surprised. You know, the law passed a few years ago, and I was surprised when it did. That made your vehicle an extension of your home. So it used
or
to
your
be
private property, technically, yeah.
right. So it used to be that your weapon had to be in plain view, and your ammunition had to be in a lock, like a glove box, as long as it locked, or
Okay.
in your trunk. Now you can carry a handgun, and it doesn't have to be in plain view, and it can be loaded. You just have to inform law enforcement if you get pulled over.
And
Now,
I
if
don't
you
know if that
get
was a law or that was because of the Supreme Court case. They were saying that you have the right to your own private property, what you do, and they extended that a vehicle is your private property.
and that it,
I don't know if it was a lawsuit or a bill, but my
it
my,
may have
my
been
standing
a
in Colorado, because we're as a state not very Second Amendment friendly, my guess would be something the courts came in
and
and
that
said.
may have been, and then Colorado just chose to abide by the ruling of the Supreme Court. But then once you step out of your car, if you don't have a concealed weapons permit, then you have to carry it openly. And I'm like you. I definitely agree about education. I received my hunter safety card in high school. Well, actually, I was in junior high school, and we actually had the class during school. Uh, they brought in an instructor for the 1 week, and you could opt out of uh, one of your classes because he was there all day, and each class was an hour long. So if you were doing well enough in a class, you could opt out for a week, do your homework at home, and go
Yeah.
and take that hunter safety course. Uh, because I mean, it's people that kill people. It's not the gun,
Well, the
but
more education. I mean, I got my hunter safety sixth or seventh grade. Always jealous that my brother, I think, got it in third grade because he had to do everything I did at the same time.
right.
I had to wait as the older sibling, but he never did. So you know how that works.
It's amazing though how just it's 30 some years ago, but when I was in high school, and I'm a year or two older than you, we used to carry our shotguns with us to school because we'd go duck and pheasant hunting after practice.
I graduated in 2013. We still had a lot of my colleagues, my peers, they keep it in their pickup.
Yeah, and today they take your pocket knife. But I mean, that's just how it's progressed. So you're here in Julesburg. We're not doing this by satellite. I'm
Oh.
not that complicated or that
Well, how are you
sophisticated yet.
satellite if we're both in the same room?
That's a split screen, but I was able to take the split out of
Okay.
it. I'm that tech savvy.
Ah, AI. One of us is fake.
Yeah, which one? So you're here in Central County, and the Central County Republicans have an event tonight. You want to let us know a little bit about that?
So the Republicans are hosting, but it's open to everybody, regardless of party. They just put it together, and it is a post legislative update uh, to just say what we just did this last session.
Oh, okay, so
It's Senator Byron Pelton, who also represents Northeast Colorado, just in the Senate chamber and the House chamber.
right,
Um, we will doing a legislative update of what just happened, what can we kind of foresee happening, what they projected, special session coming up, what are our plans moving forward, what does maybe next session look like already. Open it up to at least my style is I'd rather hear and listen. So Q&A of I'll kind of give a 5-ish minute kind of what I think feel, but then open up to what topic. I
and,
can come in and they want to talk about water or healthcare or mental health or roads, and I kind of want to see where the community wants what they want to
and water is a very hot topic right now.
hear. Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
and that'll be at the Stratesky Pavilion
Yep. Angels.
at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. We put on the thing 5 to 6. I'll stay longer if people are still engaged.
Or,
I just know if we put 7 and someone decided to show up at 6:15 and no one was there, they'd be upset.
right, right,
Or if we put 7 and we ended at 6 because we have all the discussions was done,
yeah,
it's hard to. I'd rather go over than we go under. Someone shows up and say, "Well, we still thought we had 15 minutes."
yeah, because they sure enough do it too.
Yeah.
Uh, so I really appreciate you coming.
No,
Like I
thank
said,
you.
I know I was being a little facetious when I was talking about this important uh, representative, but like I said earlier, and I truly mean it, you are a people's person. I believe someone who truly don't don't just hear, but you listen, and you take the concerns of your constituents very seriously.
Or my
And
bosses. I really say I work for the people,
right, and
so I want to hear from them.
a lot of legislators and o- other people in government forget that. Uh,
Oh, trust me, I've heard that many times at the well.
oh,
I don't know if you heard it at that same
I
day.
did.
Was that the day I gave my spiel on what representing means representing your voice, not telling you what your voice
Exactly.
means?
Yep. And
Yeah, and then they came back and said, "No, we're doing this because that's what they trusted us to do."
I actually had
Trusted government.
my wife's memory is really good. So I said,
Yeah.
tell me what she said again. I typed it in my phone, so I have that saved. I really like what that said. But I personally want to thank you uh, for your hospitality when we were up at the state capitol and the time that you took. I mean, you guys were very busy that day, but yet you still took time to speak with myself and with Mike and my wife and Dwayne when we came up there. I'm hoping that the videos that we shot and we showed people in the pictures will encourage more people to come up with us
I
uh,
hope. And
this
everyone's
next year.
invited. Anyone can
Right.
reach out to me. My cell phone's public. It is the office of everyone here in the Northeast. Not my office, it's everyone's office.
That's another thing that's really surprised me. Uh, you were so quick to give your personal cell phone number. And like I said, and I'm not just trying to blow smoke. I truly mean it when I think if we had more people representing us, not just in our state, but in federal government, like you, who really seem to be doing this for the right reason and not for your own personal gain.
I'm
Uh,
not a fan of the title. I tell everyone to call me Dusty because if you say Rep Johnson, I'm not ignoring you. I just don't respond to it right away.
I'm kind of that same way with the title of pastor. Now,
That one's a true honor, though.
right, but as long as it's used for the right reason, it's the office. I am just like anybody else. The only difference, God chose you to be, your calling was to be in government. My calling was to pastor. And that's the only difference is our calling. Our status is no different in the eyes of God.
I mean, you're
Uh,
taller, but besides that,
well, yeah, and the Bible says I'll be judged a little more harshly.
because you have a couple more feet.
Yeah, yeah. I think it has to do with that pulpit up there. But it, I cringe a little bit, and I know people are just being nice when they say, "Oh, that was a great sermon." Well, thank God for it. He gave it to me. But that sounds condescending and like you're not appreciative, but sometimes I cringe because, thank God. And, like you, I just want to be seen as a servant, just like you, from what I can tell, want to serve. And so you serve slightly different than I serve, but we both serve God and we both serve the people. And so there's a different in our job description is all. And so being able to relate with you, uh, I mean, I was able to, Scott came down here and we tried to help him out a little bit, and I hope he did. But and nothing against Scott, but I find it easier to speak to you because you seem just like a neighbor I had a few years ago that we meet at the post office and
Yeah.
sit there and talk. So
Well, and I
uh,
really do take and I have it plastered everywhere that I will never be afraid to kneel to pray or stand up for what I believe is true. But
right,
I live it through the doctrine of I'm actually gonna get recertified through classes. I mean, ideally, I pass the classes. So I'm gonna get recertified to be an EMT again.
right,
So I really do mean I want to serve. Where I can't. And I was a sports athletic trainer. Now I didn't wash their feet per se. I wrapped their feet and ankles and everything else. But really living of you see Jesus who washes the feet of
the,
those of society that they think they're the least deserving.
right,
And I really
and
want to make sure that I'm not just service in politics, but I want to get back in the ambulance. Just to,
and that's something that northeastern Colorado is really struggling with is having enough EMTs. I know
enough of anything, but yeah,
yeah, we struggle with that here. Uh,
yeah.
finding enough volunteers that are qualified to do it. Uh, so again, I really appreciate you coming,
I know. Keep in touch
and
anytime.
oh, I will. You may regret.
No, no, and you can share my
Uh,
cell phone with anyone. It's on my website. It's on my cards. It's a public domain. I've given
well,
it out to people.
I will bless you and be choosy about it.
Thank you. Well,
But
there are some weird folks out there. Now they tend
uh,
to be from Denver, not out in this area,
right.
but
Oh, we got yeah, people think I'm that way. Uh, again, for you to take the time to come here and do this with me, uh, I'm hoping this will help. Uh, the podcast that I'm starting isn't all about religion, but it's how, uh,
we'll open the conversation, right? Whether
right,
it's
it's how
politics or
the
mental health
church
or
and all aspects of life are actually joined together, or they should be joined together. Uh, and so uh, I'll get this out. And if you go on to YouTube, it's the only platform I got right now until I can talk my wife and let me spend some money.
well, as soon
Uh,
as you publish it, let me know, and I'll put it on my website. I'll put it on my social medias
perfect.
at least to get.
I'm hoping I'll have it done today if it's fixed. Because yeah, well, I can download it and then upload it to YouTube without Facebook. So now that I got it on my phone, but anyway, they're not
Perfect.
wanting to hear this. But uh,
This is how you make a podcast.
I'm learning that God gives us this technology, and it's hard to get people to come to the brick and mortar church.
Mhm.
And I definitely don't want to say this is a substitute because it's not. Paul made it very clear that we should not fail to gather because we draw strength from one another. But
But it could
uh,
be a supplement. I mean, if you look at farmers in harvest time that can't make it,
absolutely,
you look at someone who
yeah,
is our truckers travel all the time. You could talk about, law enforcement, first responders, fire,
yeah.
healthcare workers, and they have to work Sunday.
The 8 years I worked at the prison,
Prison
only
workers,
a
they
year
can't.
and a
Yeah.
half of that was I off on Sunday morning, and from the time I walked away from the church till I came back, somehow the church decided we only need to have church one time a week. And
In some communities, I see it because they're such a
yeah,
small. I mean, if you have a community of, I mean, we have communities as small as 17.
yeah. Well,
Would you need two church services for a community as small as 17? Probably
well,
not.
the thing of it is, though, what about the guy that works on Sunday? That's what I look at, and so that's something we're discussing. But there is, I drove a truck for 5 years, and I used to listen. Uh, I would hit the same states around the same time each week, and I learned the preachers on the radio that I really liked. But
which
always,
time frame and which one picked
yeah,
up the
I
service
always.
on your probably
So
AM.
yeah, there's definitely
Yeah.
a place for it, and so
Well,
I'm
and it could
hoping.
be for those who they don't have a look of a Christian goer, whatever that
Yeah,
look might be, or they're scared to come back to the church because they've been chased away. It might just
yeah,
help open up their hearts and get the courage again to come back.
absolutely. And so that's the intention of this. Take what God gives us,
Yeah.
like this technology. Uh, I'm glad He's working on my patience because not too long ago, that little gimbal thing would have been out in that dumpster.
Oh,
That's what they
that's what
call
it
that
called?
thing.
Oh,
Yeah, but it,
I called it Wally.
yeah. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, and
And
I'll see you at the lunch
yes,
thing. And
ma'am,
if
I
you
will
have
be there,
questions, and
and I'll bring you some little baby Jesuses.
yay, I gave
And
mine away. So I had because a couple of people always share them. I love it.
yeah,
I always end up giving mine away because there was a, and usually it's because we have a lot of people who come, whether it's because of a fallen officer or public leader that we're recognizing and praying because we just lost them. This little girl, she was crying. I'm like,
uh,
you need to
right.
like,
And you can go on Amazon
yeah,
and get like 100 or 200 of them for like $20.
mhm.
And a pastor friend of mine that pastors at the Harvest Baptist Church there in Ovid, he's the one that showed them to me. We were at their church for a Valentine's Day dinner, and he came up to me and he said, everybody needs a little Jesus," and he handed me that little.
Yep.
And it took me a second to figure out the little Jesus part.
And it just says Jesus with the heart, and then you,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And so it's. But I'll bring you some of
yeah.
those, and what you do is take one of them and put him someplace uh, and leave him there, and then he'll always be with you.
I need to find. Oh, yeah, I want to put one in 3 places: my office, my desk on the floor, and then in my vehicle.
There you go.
Well, you
I
see, I'm like on every county,
I
so
usually keep about 5 or 6 on my shelf in there, but we have uh, little kids that come for Sunday school, and they'll
I'd be
always come
worried
in.
about how young those kids go. They put it in their mouth. That's so,
Oh no, they're not that young.
okay.
I'm
I'm
talking
saying that now as an EMT, I don't want to have to give time to a
in
kid.
10,
And I, yeah.
11 is what these
Oh,
kids
that's
are.
fine. Yeah.
But they'll always tell me, "Pastor, I lost my Jesus." And I say, "You can't lose your." "Oh, I lost my Jesus." I said, "You can't lose."
And then they're like, no, this little guy.
No, I know what they're
Oh,
talking
okay.
about. And so I'll give them another, and then I'll give them 2, and I'll say, "I'll give you this one, replace the one you lost, if you'll take this one and give it to somebody. But if you don't give it to somebody, don't come back and ask me for another, and I'll know." I said, "God shows me everything."
I did for a couple kids I just hang out with. I know they're family. And then I have to get on a Zoom. But those little they're called fish eyes that have a little
Oh,
screw on
yeah,
them.
yeah,
And I feel so bad doing it, but I also like to do it. Because it's just plastic. But it's
right.
the concept. If you put it in on his head, it's the only way. But if you screw it in his head, and then you can add either for little kids like girls that want to put it on a chain,
Oh,
or if they
yeah.
want to put it on a keychain and put it on their backpack.
Well, I don't see it. I don't see no. No. Yeah, I know exactly.
It
That's a
just
good
feels a
idea.
little weird because you're putting it in like it's just a piece of plastic, but it's like I had to get
Well,
over it. But now if it makes it a little
it's
keychain.
it's no different than a cross.
Right.
This wasn't on the cross, but yet it holds it close
Yeah.
to my heart, and so I've actually done that with a lot of things.
Well, it
Uh,
would be a fun. I mean, I'll come and do it on a Sunday with you. I mean, I'm a fidgeter,
yeah,
so I'll come listen. But I'll bring my fault. You give me your Jesuses, I'll give the eyes, and then that way, at least for the like the
yeah.
kids, here's a little keychain, here's a
Oh,
necklace.
that would be great.
Because I can't tell you how many times, even as an adult, I'll leave something in my pocket. I lose business cards more away than not. I'm
Yeah,
tired. You put it through the washer.
I
Throw
try
me an
to.
envelope, little Jesus, and it gets through the washer.
I like winter because I keep some in my pocket of
Yeah.
my coat, and then as I'm going through Walmart, I'll just set one on the shelf. Or when
Yeah.
I do the self checkout, I'll leave one on the little scan thing. And I don't need to know what happens to it. If it gets thrown in the trash, well, I hate that it got thrown in the trash, but whoever threw it in the trash had to touch
Yeah.
it. And the Bible tells us that God's word doesn't return void, and it doesn't have to be a spoken word. It can be just a thought, and you'll never forget it. So, well, thank you so much. I know
I will
you
see you in
have
about an hour.
other things to do,
I get
and
to hop on with some school district superintendents across the state.
oh, get to it.
I switch so many topics.